So why don't we go ahead and start? And thanks everyone for joining us today for Climate Conversations, looking at managing money. And let me just pop up the screen.
Prominence led to her own syndicated talk show.
Good. So hopefully that works okay for taking a look at what we're talking about today. And a number of different things around managing your money, and as was in the announcement. Let me start with the opening prayer. Let me start with the land acknowledgement first. St. Mark's Cathedral acknowledges that we gather on the traditional lands of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, who are still here, and we honor with gratitude the land itself and the life of all the Coast Salish tribes. And then let's start with a prayer. Lord, thank you for the blessings in my life. Thank you for providing for my needs and giving me what I need every day. Well, please help me not to rely solely on myself or others to provide for needs. Give me wisdom with every cent that comes through my hands. God, show me what to give, save, and spend. I want to live in your will. Thank you, Lord, for caring for my needs and showing me your love and care daily. Please open my eyes to the miraculous ways that you care for me. Amen.
Amen.
So what we're going to do today is start with looking at a framework of some concepts of managing money. And then we're going to look into these four aspects: saving, spending, sharing, investing, and also look a little bit at income, where income comes from, and the different ways that we receive it. So it's fairly broad in terms of what we're doing. And then I'll go through some presentation materials and discussion presentation materials and sort of a framework for what we're going to do. And then we've got time for discussion in the middle and discussion at the end. And so please, think of questions or ideas or what you do and what you'd like to share during our discussion time. But if we start out, what we're looking at is earning and using money. And we begin with, where does money come from for us? And there are a lot of ways that we can receive money. If we're working full-time or part-time, part of it's from a salary or an hourly rate or something like that. If we invest in certain things, stocks and some others, there are dividends. There may be a 401k that you'll have be able to use later in life, but there can be income from that if your company is matching it, for example. There's interest, large and small. If you have a savings account and earning the 0.01% interest, there's a little bit of interest, and then there are other options in there. Some things come from the government as well. Depending on what you're doing, there can be government grants or government support or a variety of different things. We can get gifts. Parents give cash gifts, friends give cash gifts, and then there's a variety of others as well. So there's a lot of different sources. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do, especially around where we have a choice on the income that's coming in. And then we use the money to spend. That's the things we buy all the time that we need, or sometimes buy things that we don't need. But we spend money, which we'll talk about. We save part of it, hopefully, and it has to go somewhere if we're saving it. Hopefully it's not cash under the mattress at this point. It's in a bank or something else. And so we'll talk about ways to choose the right ways to save money. Investing is something else that, choose the right investments to do. And there are a lot of different things that you can do, so we'll talk about some of the options on that. And then sharing is really donating. Where do we give money away, whether it's to the church, to particular causes, or to other areas. So we'll be talking about all of those as we go through. So some thoughts on sort of a framework for managing our money. It starts really with a plan, a budget, and looking at the things we need to buy and how much money we need for that. And then what we're going to do on savings and investing. We set up wills or other documents so that we're prepared for the future. We may give some money away to charitable causes or family or other things. But it's setting up the plan, the budget. It can be a formal budget, really detailed. It can be an informal budget, but that budget is really the place to start. And it's putting your heart into your plan. So it can be a very numeric exercise, totally impersonal, as you're choosing though, it's really saying what do I value? What's important for me? And putting that heart into your plan. A healthy fear of the love of money is important. Yeah, I've done consulting for a long time because I love the freedom of consulting. And then I say, oh, great. Well, let me tell you how it works. And then they say, well, I cannot give up my job because I need to earn this amount and I need to pay for this. And it really is that fear um, of losing money, which is sort of like the love of money that people look at. So it's something to consider as we go along, fear the love of money. And then have a vision for how creating capital can lift up others, have a kingdom impact. And creating capital can be earning money, it can be investing and getting dividends or interest from your money. A variety of ways you can do that. You could start a company and make money, but whatever way you use to create capital, think about what the impact can be on others and how you can have a positive impact. And that means making giving a core part of what you do and stretching in the generosity that you have. A lot of what we do is based on our life values. And this table has a list of different values that we can have. And it's all over the map in terms of what people want to do and what's important for people. And our money, what we do with it is generally going to reflect a lot of those life's values. So, if faith is one of your values, and I think that's probably true for most people here, then that's going to affect how we use our money. I do a lot around things around sustainability, environmental sustainability. So nature and caring for nature is one of my values. We can look at caring for people, community as some of our values, compassion. A friend volunteers in a hospice, tremendous compassion, and we'll do some things around that. So, it's just figuring out what your values are to begin with, and what gives you meaning, and using those values as the guiding principle for what you're going to do with your money, whether you are earning, spending, investing, saving, giving. The values may drive what you do. And so it's important to start by thinking about what your values are and using those values to guide your money management. It's sort of interesting to look at the Bible. It's there's one group that I'm in, and I do some things with startups and new entrepreneurs. And the pastors are looking at how can you just focus on making money. And there are different ways to invest in startups, for example. But they can have real positive impacts. And making money is not a bad thing. If you go through and look at various parts of the Bible, it's more how you use the money than whether you make money. So if we look at Proverbs, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all you produce. So that's the framework to begin with of we're stewards of money. We're not just using it to build McMansions and buy Maseratis, and that's a different sort of thing. It's really honor the Lord with your wealth. Ecclesiastes looks at preparing. So invest in 7 ventures. You can invest in different things. It's not a bad thing. Invest in 8 because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And so having a plan goes back to that budgeting, and the plan is part of that. That investing is fine, and think of what you can do and how you're going to be prepared for whatever comes next. Matthew, the story about the 5 talents, 2 talents, and 1 talent. That you don't just put it in the ground. The man who made 5 talents got praised quite a bit, and that meant that he had to give the money back to his master. But it meant that there was more money around, and then it's how you do that. So again, it's saying there's no problem with making money. Turn your 5 talents or your $5 into $10. That's a good thing. It's what you do with it. And then First Peter tells us sort of what to do with it. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in various forms. And that can be any talents that we have. It can be our money that you have. We can use that to help others, serve others. And in our case as well, focusing on creation care. we can use some of our gifts, whether it's our talents or our monies, large or small, to care for creation as part of what we do. And you can make money to care for creation as well. So as we look at creation care and money, environmental stewardship is spiritual exercise against greed and selfishness. It's so easy. I'm looking at sort of what's going on in our state, national level, our city, and there are some practices that are based on helping businesses that may not be environmentally friendly. But what we're looking at is environmental stewardship, creation care, is really looking at how we create and use wealth for the common good and for the care of creation. And so that's sort of the beginning process in here of anything we have, keeping that in mind. It's the stewardship for the good of creation, the good of the earth, the good of other people who are doing wonderful things. And that means, it's not just cutting down trees and building, and all the things that go along with society for many people these days. And we can make caring for creation part of managing our wealth or not. I think a lot of times we focus on, well, here's how much I'm earning, and here's how much I'm spending, and there's this amount in my savings account, and I'll invest in this. And we may not make creation care a fundamental part of that. So it's really stepping back periodically and saying, is creation care reflected in the investments I've made, where I'm saving my money, where I'm earning my money, and making sure that it is a part of what we do. And we can use our innovation and ingenuity to meet the environmental challenges. I look at it that I am not an entrepreneur coming up with some brilliant idea that's going to save the world. I meet people like that all the time, and it's wonderful. But I can help them and coach them and use sort of my different skills and my 27 cents of financial support to help them along the way and apply that to try to reduce the environmental challenges that we face. So it's really putting creation care in part of what we do. So as we go through the various parts of looking at what we do, let's start with income. A key part of it is a lot of our income may come from employment. And that can be, sort of a normal job that we have. It can be the company that we run. It can be the nonprofit that we work for, the church that we work for, a variety of different things. But we're compensated for work that we do, freelancers as well, gig workers. It's good to be at an organization that's aligned with your values. And, it's looking at the company or nonprofit or organization we work for and making sure that what their fundamental values are, the mission and vision, and a lot of organizations have values, those reflect what our values are as well from any income that we're getting. And then we'll talk about dividends and interest and other income as we go along as part of the investment. But that also is making sure that aligns with our values, that we're investing in things or putting our money in things that are aligned with our values. But a lot of it comes from the employment that we have or from work that we're doing. That's where our income comes from, as well as investments. But for managing our money, creating the budget we talked a little about earlier. So it's identifying the earnings or income that we have, the expenses that we have, and including everything, including saving and investing as part of the budget, and then really spending a little bit of time putting numbers together and saying, what are my sources of income and what are my expenses? And making sure that we have enough income to pay for the expenses. And just societally as a whole at this point, I think that's a challenge for people. I look at the buy now, pay later phenomenon where instead of just, putting things on a credit card, you use a card which allows you to buy your groceries and divide the expense into 4 installments you'll pay over the next month. That sort of indicates that there's a bit of a problem in here, that somehow the income is not is not sufficient to pay all the expenses. But it's making sure you include everything and it all balances out. And hopefully there's extra in there for the savings and investing from whatever income you have. Creation care can be factored into the budget, be in terms of what you buy or don't buy, and higher cost or lower cost. So some of what we'll be talking about on the spending side is we don't need to buy as much. We're so tempted by advertising and what we see on streaming and advertisements and anything we do, we're tempted to buy, but we don't need to buy all the time. We do need to factor in that some of the more environmentally friendly foods or clothing or other things that we buy may have a higher cost. The costs are coming down, which is good news, but there may be a higher cost. So if you're looking at what you're buying for breakfast or what type of shirt you're buying, factor in the creation care cost or lower, it could be higher cost or lower cost of whatever you're going to buy into your budget. Again, ensure that you have enough income to pay what's going out. We don't want to get into debt. If there's not enough, it's adjusting spending. When I first started working, my budget was very tight. And the adjustment was there were macaroni and cheese weeks, because at that point, macaroni and cheese was very cheap. And if there wasn't enough income, then I wasn't going to go into debt, but I was going to change what I do. I had some unexciting weeks, as you can imagine. And we can do that with larger things as well, in terms of clothing we buy, or a car we buy, or a television or a phone we buy or don't buy. And then the key is following that budget. It's very easy to, it takes a little bit of work to put the budget together, but it's very easy to fall out of step with that. And just say, well, this one time I'm going to overspend because it's my birthday or it's something else. But it is following through consistently on the budget to make sure that we're not spending too much and that we have enough income to pay our expenses and to save a little bit as well, and hopefully donate as well along the way. So that's a sort of framework to start with, and then beginning to get into income. But let's shift over to some discussion around what are your core values for managing your money and why? How do you put creation care into steps for managing your money? And how can you align your vocation or avocation with creation care? If you're working full-time or part-time, it's fine. If you're doing something else with your time, that's fine too. But how do you align what you're doing with your values? Open it up for ideas and what people are doing.
I think
Stephanie, you're on mute if you're talking. Yeah. And Richard, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
It muted me.
I
Go ahead, Richard.
was just going to say, I think that aligning your values to the detail of creation care for your job is a bit constraining. I think, the old Google motto, which I don't think they actually do, of, do no evil. At some point, I think you have to find something that is at least making the world a better place.
Yep.
And that's a perfectly reasonable expression of your values, but to focus on a particular thing, that might not work so well. And just to give a brief example of what I do, I've been a software engineer all my life, and the last company I worked for made a general purpose tool, but the people there were compassionate. We had a public service charity arm, and they used to do things with it to help groups who were doing things like water resource planning or something like that. But that wasn't what I did. What I did was down in the bowels of the code. Right. So, but I agree. And one of the jobs I did not take many years ago, even though I probably needed it at the time, was very early on at Amazon. I was just saying, no, the world does not need more consumption.
Yeah, yeah. But you're right. It can be very hard, and if you're in a company, uh, can be difficult to look for that one area. Yeah, good point. Stephanie?
I was art teacher. I worked for 23 years at a inner city school in Philadelphia. Now I'm out
Ooh.
here in the Seattle area. I'm on Bainbridge Island at the moment. So I felt like I chose a career in a particular school and district that aligned with my core values.
Nice.
I mean, it was a reasonable salary, I suppose, but wasn't making millions.
Yeah. But aligning it with your values, and it's like caring for people, nurturing the next generation is, yeah, really important. Absolutely. And that's when my wife is a teacher and my daughter's been a teacher. And same kind of thing. They're trying to help the next generation. It's sort of core to their philosophy. Yeah, really nice. Hopefully, moving up to Bainbridge has worked well. So, yeah. Carolyn?
Well, first of all, I have to applaud Stephanie for her work, especially through art with an inner city school.
Yeah.
Yay, yay. I was just going to say one way that I'm retired at this point, but one way I have done it is by taking the money I have in a mutual fund and converting it all over to sustainable funds.
Nice.
And actually, I met with a financial advisor just today, and I got to see the map, and it's the graph of my investments and how they would be, if I had not been, and it's very similar.
Hmm.
So,
Compared to some socially conscious decisions and some not so socially conscious, that the graph was fairly equal. Is that what you're saying?
yes, I certainly haven't lost money by
Good to hear.
going sustainable. So that's an affirmation. I'm sorry, it sounds a little self-serving, but it's something I really wanted
No,
to
it's
do.
fine. I mean, go ahead and make money, and then you can do good things with it.
Right. That's the goal for me. I'm currently not invested in very good things, and I want to change that. So
Yeah.
but of course we want to make wise choices and
Mhm.
manage our money well. So
Yeah, in the second half, we'll talk a little about that of how to invest and find some investments or savings or other things. So, yeah. Yeah. Rich?
In a sense, I'm a priest today because I felt that my personal values were not aligned at all with what I was doing. And I didn't I didn't work for a defense contractor or an oil company or anything like that. I worked for a life insurance company, a
Mm.
huge international Canadian life insurance company. And I was always a religious person, but I had this experience where I just kind of said, oh my gosh, I'm spending 70 hours a week working. Yes, I'm providing a service for people, I guess, but I would rather be with people at more important moments in their lives. And this all came around the death of my grandmother. And when I realized, this is the stuff of life, but
Yeah.
not all of this. And so that just led to my own vocational path. And it's not like working for the church just takes care of all of that. It doesn't. But as I just was listening to what you were sharing, Richard, excellent, by the way. I'm so lucky to be with a parish that does value
Yes.
creation care and like really putting our money where our mouth is, like, our current capital campaign and what we're trying to do. It's like, yeah, everybody talks about, become more sustainable or let's reduce our carbon emissions, but we're actually trying to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to all of you whether that works, but yeah, I mean, and in terms of my own commitment to it, personally, my own pledge to the capital campaign was very significant for me in
Mhm.
terms of my directing my income from employment toward that. My
Fantastic.
income and some of my wealth. I'm actually transferring money from my paltry wealth to it as well. So I'm doing the both and thing. So to me, that's really important, really.
Yeah.
And I've done that. I've done that. I've tried to do that my most of my adult life.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Rich.
Sure.
Yeah,
We're
thanks for sharing
glad that you are where you are.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
that. Yeah.
Hey, I had a weird thought from your presentation. Is this very sort of mundane, but you were talking about advertising and how it does things. And it occurred to me that one of the things I've had for years are ad blockers. And
Mhm.
they're not that expensive. And I'm sitting here wondering now, do they actually, not only save you money, but help you, focus on what's important by
Mhm.
keeping all these distractions out of your news feeds and goodness knows what else. I also use a paid search engine because I find that Google's goal is to sell me things, not provide
Mhm.
me with information.
Mhm.
And, so you might want to look at, I mean, some of these services, like, not sure what ad block is, but it's like $30 a year or something. And what is it? I use a private web service called KG, which is like 120 a year, so like $10 a month. Makes me wonder, how much do I save by not having all of this stuff in my face, convincing me to try and do things.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't thought of the ad blocker in that way, but you're absolutely right. Yeah.
I just actually, my late husband had a service to block everything, and I think it expired or something. And I was like looking into it again. I was like, oh, these stupid ads are popping up.
Mhm.
It wastes a lot of your time and energy
Yeah.
just processing it all. And
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, Richard. I love, you're a software development engineer, so you're like, what products can I use to kind of help me? But the spiritual side of that as well is
Mhm.
you're, keeping yourself from having this constant assault
Yeah.
from Madison Avenue telling you, you must have this.
Mhm.
If you want to be complete or if you want to be happy or if you want to be beautiful, you need to have this, which, that, yeah, I don't know. It just takes a toll on us as spiritual beings.
Yeah.
Right. And
So I
the
just really
small fee per
affirm.
year might be worth psychologically our energies and just not having to
Yeah.
be tempted or distracted by them.
Yeah.
So I guess I'd like to ask a clarifying question to Rich. Can these be both for television and for what I get through my computer?
They're basically for computers. Televisions, that's funny. When I was doing EE in college, one project we actually had was to build something that would turn the sound off during ads because the average sound level is higher than it is
Yeah.
during the program.
Indeed.
But
Absolutely.
that was just something we threw together on a workbench.
Mhm.
I never saw a product for it.
Yeah.
There's
Guess that's how I got into
yeah,
it.
there's services and things that you can, but I believe they're separate for TV than it would be for your cell phone and for your email.
Of course.
Different
Yeah.
things you'd have to go through.
Mhm.
Well, Well, let me go back to the slides and then we'll look at the second half and then come back and discuss this a little bit more. So just one sec. Okay, what we're going to do now is go through the spending, saving, investing, and giving side of things. Then we can discuss that more at the end as well. So the framework for spending is looking at what we buy and how much we buy and where we buy. What we buy is, choosing things that will last and can be environmentally friendly for us and healthy for us. For whether it's food or clothing or cars or phones or whatever else. And then how much we buy, it's exactly what we were talking about just now with the ads. That we're so tempted to buy more and more and more. But clothing, 30 to 40% is only worn once, especially with the fast fashion these days. And so people are buying it and then putting it in the closet and have big closets and throw it out before long. And then food as well, 30% is wasted. And we don't think of it, but well, that little packet of something in the back that we missed for a while and that is no longer good, and it's massive amounts. So some of that comes from the restaurants, but a lot of it is just from us as individuals. So it is how much we buy and making sure that we're actually only buying what we need, and then where we buy it is looking at the companies that produce it and what their values are, and whether they're doing things right. Both in terms of the content of what's produced and then in terms of their way of producing what we're buying. Because some of it, whether it's very energy intensive or, in fashion, for example, there's a lot of wastage in fashion and things are not made to last. So it's looking at that as well. It's aligning our purchases with how much money we have so that we don't go into debt, with the values we talked about earlier. And to some degree, at least, with creation care, in terms of buying local food, for example, or buying clothes that will last for a long time, or buying not replacing our phones or other devices every year. They last for a long time. Where to have it till it wears out. So it really is that framework for buying things that are right for us, right for our values, and right for the planet. And considering creation care and what we do. So in terms of the spending, it's reduce what we buy less is a big part of it. In terms of looking at eco-friendly and green brands, I just went on and online and said, what can I do? There are, when we're in the supermarket, Green Choice scores food, and one part of that is environmental footprint. So there are apps that we can use. Rawganic is clothing, and we can look for clothing that is more environmentally friendly. Patagonia is sort of the poster child for that, but there are a lot of others around as well. And we can do a lot with searching for information or using AI to get information about what we're actually buying, so that we're buying sort of the right things and not buying too much of it. So part of it also is simply reading the labels and looking at what materials and ingredients are there. And durability for what we're doing. So much of what we buy is really not durable at all. It will it'll fall apart before too long. The ingredients on the food we're eating, some of those are interesting, and it is so easy to buy things from far away, which has an environmentally large impact as well on materials. So it's looking at it and really analyzing what we're buying, what it is, and making sure that we're buying things that make sense. We can reuse things as well to avoid waste, buy secondhand things, groups for sharing, Too Good To Go. A lot of fun when I do my packets of stuff from a bakery near us and from supermarkets. And then Olio is another one for sharing anything that we have too much of, whether it's food or clothing or books or whatever else. So that's one. And there are a number of others around as well. There's some neighbors groups in Seattle. I think Phinney Ridge has one, and others that allow us to share things with other people rather than throwing it away. So a lot of ways that we can cut down on what we buy the right things, and then not throw things away, give it away, when I buy presents for my kids for Christmas and birthdays, they say buy it from Amazon Renewed, because that's all sort of it's guaranteed by Amazon. They've checked out the things they're selling. Walmart has Walmart Refurbished, and others have similar things. Best Buy or others have a lot of things that we can buy that are used and that are in good shape. So a lot of different ways to do that. So spending within our means and then buying the right things is a key part of these spending practices. When we're looking at savings, and whether it's and this goes beyond just savings, it's our checking account and savings account or other bank accounts. Banks aggregate the deposits and then use those funds to make loans. The fundamentals of banking. I had my career was in banking, and so I did that in various ways in the bank. A small part of a small cog in a big giant organization. But the banks may make loans to businesses that are not so friendly, such as coal, or such as gas or oil, or depending on what your values are, casinos, or some of the forestry companies that are not reforesting, or food companies that are buying and not managing the land well or managing animals well. For those of us who are vegetarians, it's more managing the way things are planted and fertilizers or things like that, and what's being funded. So that goes beyond what we would normally look at. But we can look at the types of organizations that banks or other financial institutions are funding. Most banks have an environmental policy, and they will report an impact report in terms of what they're doing. Some of them are a couple hundred pages, so there's plenty to read through. There's also the summary on it. But we can see if the policy aligns with our values for the bank that we're choosing. And if it's not the right bank, then choose a different bank. Some of the large national banks do all sorts of things, and ones like Aspiration or Beneficial will be better aligned with our values in many cases. So it is looking at that. And Bank of America, just I put that in as an example, has their environmental and social risk policy, and I'll show that something about that in just a sec. And then there's this Banking on Climate Chaos report that looks at the various banks and what they're doing. So sort of interesting to look at that. But the fundamental thing is looking at the bank and doing more just saying, oh, okay, this is a well-known bank. It's looking at what they actually do. So we can use a variety of things to do that. There are reports from the companies and from analysts that we can use. We can do Google searches. We can do AI, use AI. There are B Corp certification. There's a Global Alliance for Banking on Values is one organization that looks at what banks are doing. So a lot of different ways that we can get this information. One of the things I'm gradually using AI more and more.
That's interesting.
And so I put in a question about Bank of America and looked at sort of what they're doing with their money in terms of what they're loaning. And what they said initially was that they're mobilizing $1 trillion to accelerate the transition to a low carbon sustainable economy. And then what AI also found is that they changed that. They had pledged not to finance coal mines and coal-fired power plants and organic drilling, then removed that ban on those types of loans and said, we'll just do more due diligence. I don't read 200-page reports on environmental sustainability. I'm sorry, from the banks. And so there's an easier way to do it of using AI or using searches to get the information about what they're actually doing and what they're changing. And I might have not have noticed this anyway because enhanced due diligence, I sort of gloss over that. So there are some ways that we can get it more easily than in the past. I also used AI to find out what banks work better and do things well. So Aspiration Bank does not do anything with fossil fuel investments. They offset carbon, carbon offsets. Beneficial State Bank does green lending for a variety of different things, clean energy, housing, nonprofits. So those are a couple banks, and there are a whole bunch more. Just this is what fit on here. But we can source banks. Forbes has the 14 socially responsible banks. So not looking at the environment so much, but looking at socially responsible. So a number of different ways that we can analyze banks and get the information we need and choose the right bank. So where our savings are does matter because our funds, small or large, are used for lending to other organizations. Then when we look at investing, there are a whole lot of different things that we can do. The exchange traded funds, ETFs, are one option. Mutual funds are options. So you can invest in sort of a basket of shares or bonds or other types of investments, which makes it really easy for you. You can invest in bonds directly or invest in shares of companies directly. They can be in the US or outside the US. You could buy real estate or invest in real estate investment trusts, which can be the shares or ETFs, but it's the real estate investment trust, REITs, invest in a bundle of real estate. You can do private equity, so investing in companies that are not listed on stock exchanges, whether they're family-owned companies or startups or other ones, or private investments run by large firms. And there's lots more we can do on our investing side. So there are a variety of options out there in terms of what we can invest in and earn the dividends or interest from the organizations. So as we're investing, it goes back to identifying our values, which we talked about earlier, and using those values to govern our investments. That may mean that we're not investing in the latest and greatest that is as being recommended by some of the advisors or some of the newsletters or whatever else, but using those values to select what we invest in. And it's the ethical guidelines that are going to align with creation care for many of us in terms of the types of companies or organizations that we invest in, which brokerage firm we're using if we're investing. And it could be a bank, it could be a separate brokerage firm. And we can find more environmentally friendly brokerage firms that we do. One option on it is to set screening criteria. And that's sort of an easy way to do things. And saying if a company is involved in oil or gas or tobacco or food, it depends on what they're doing and on raising food. JBS is listing, I think, on Friday, and they're tearing down the rainforest to raise more beef and soybeans. And so it's looking, we don't invest in certain companies and set those screening criteria in there. One thing is to do maybe an investment policy statement. It can be very simple, a paragraph, a couple sentences saying, here's what I do and here's what I don't do. And then we can analyze the investments and use our analysis. And I'll have a little bit on the next page about how to do the analysis to select the ETFs or the mutual funds that we invest in, or the shares that we invest in, or the 401ks or the bonds or whatever else. And we can use that information for our personal investments. If we're selecting our own, we can let our advisors know if we're using an advisor for our investments and say, tell your advisor, here's what I want to do or not do. And another part of it is voting your shares. This is an example from Schwab, which I use. And I get the annual general meeting notice, and I can vote really easily. And it's clicking on it. And I'd not done it in the past, but I'm starting to do that to see if there's anything environmental and voting on environmental issues that are coming up to choose. And the investment analysis is, there are a lot of ways you can do it. It's leveraging internet and other sources. So Morningstar and Yahoo Finance have a fair amount of information. The company documents have a fair amount of information, but again, it's going back to AI. So I put in the search and sort of, this is just what I put in. I use Perplexity, and there's ChatGPT and a number of others. But I said, well, I want to invest in ETFs or mutual funds that take a creation care perspective, prioritize environmental sustainability. I want to have a fund or ETF with lower risk, good returns. Which 3 should I look at? And I've got 3. I just put it in. And so it made my life much easier. And then I need to go in and look and see what they actually do. But the Inspired Tactical Balance Fund is risen, is the It's interesting that it tells you, in a sense, it's a Christian-led fund. Gilead, Eventide, another Christian organization, Timothy Plan. So this was a very easy way to do it, to find mutual funds. I could do the same thing with shares in companies. I could do the same thing with bonds. I could do, real estate. I can use a variety of different things, but it's just putting it in and then using AI to make my life easier in the analysis. So it is possible to read through information from, Morningstar, Yahoo Finance, newsletters, whatever else, company documents, but AI can do a lot of the work for us. So it's something that we can look at a bit more, and it's not that hard to use. Even I can do it. And then in terms of our giving, align the giving that we do with our values and include creation care as part of that. Rich mentioned that the church, St. Mark's, is doing a lot around creation care, and a number of churches are, which is absolutely fantastic. There are other organizations, nonprofits, that we can look at as well, whether it's WWF or Conservation International or local groups, Conservation Northwest, a number of different things, looking at how they're stewarding creation. Now, a lot of the groups are secular, but it's looking at it and saying, what makes sense in there, and what we're going to do. There are creation care organizations. Environmental Evangelical Network is sort of an interesting one. I'm not evangelical, but they've got some good programs going on. And that's one that they're educating people around creation care, basically. And there are a number of others like that, locally and nationally, that we could consider. One thing to do is sort of build relationships with the organization, provide feedback, and then focusing our whatever giving we're doing, small or large, on those really good organizations that align with our values, and taking the time to find them and track them over time. So as we analyze where to donate, part of it is using some of the sources that are out there, like Charity Navigator or Charity Watch or Wise Giving Alliance, as a screening tool for getting some information about the organizations. We can read the organization's materials. They generally will have some kind of, whether it's an annual report or a website that explains what they do. And then we can choose the organizations to give to that align with our values. And sometimes, giving money to small and lesser known organizations will work better. I mean, WWF is really big. They're doing fantastic work. And there's some smaller ones in the Seattle area that have a lot less money that are also doing really good work. And so we could choose those. And again, AI can help with this. If we put in, we're looking to donate to a worthy organization that focuses on XYZ relating to our Christian values or our creation care values or environmental values or whatever it may be, and use that to find charities. And if we want to look for them in Seattle or in Washington State or nationally or internationally, we can look for that. So that's another way to do it as well. So the result of those practices relating to our income and then the saving, spending, sharing with donations and investing enables us to earn a financial return, have a creation care return as well, that there are environmental positives from what we're doing, and we care for God's creation, and we have impact. And it really is looking at the output, not outcome. A lot of organizations will value what they do on the donation side in terms of how many people showed up, but we're looking at it in terms of what change did they make. Same thing on corporations or the companies we invest in. What is their positive impact on the environment or on other areas that we care about? And the key to all of this is aligning each aspect with our values. So the sort of questions are, how do you manage your spending in line with creation care? How do you manage your investments, taking creation care, keeping it in mind, or the charities that you donate to? So what are some of the practices that you use to invest, save, donate in line with your values and spend?
Well, I definitely do use the Charity Navigator and
Mm.
and things to check up on organizations that use their money well,
Mhm.
and find organizations that I connect with.
Excellent.
I found it ties into the whole advertisement thing that I given up on ever donating through, the I'll just say organizations that tend to um sell your information to others, so that
Hmm.
you're bombarded with
Yep.
so many requests just because you want to donate to somebody, or an organization that spends far too much money on advertising and mailings. It's a kind of, even though they can be very well respected organizations, it rubs me the wrong way when they constantly send me glossy color copied fancy things in the mail.
Yep.
I feel like that's where where my money's going to. So I do try to find organizations that don't do that, or that give an easy way for you to opt out of that.
Really good.
I found some places to be able to donate. Actually, Charity Navigator, I think it does. You can donate through them anonymously to some places, and
Nice.
then you don't get any of that stuff.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So to be able to give to somebody anonymously is like, I don't need any, like, just because I give to you once doesn't mean I necessarily want to give to you again, or get a mailing or an email or a text over and over and over again. It puts like the power in your hands a little bit more, and it doesn't, give you that emotional plea to keep giving, or to whatever. You decide where you want your money to go to, rather than being dictated to by their advertisement, which I understand why they do it, but I don't really want that in my life. So
You can choose what you do.
yeah.
Exactly. Nice. Thanks for sharing.
So is that through the, I mean, the
I-
place I've seen Charity Navigator is through the National Philanthropic Trust, but you can donate directly through them?
I believe that's right. I've been
Okay.
using something else through a charitable fund to be able to do it anonymously as well, but I think it's called a giving basket, where you like put money into the basket, Charity Navigator, and then you can disperse it to the organizations through them, and it just keeps you all
Yeah.
anonymous.
Nice.
Kind of cool. And there's also, if you're interested in giving politically, there's a website called it sounds bad, but oath.vote, where you can give to a lot of it's political stuff, but they also have some nonprofits as well that they recommend, and you can do it anonymously through them, which I love.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad died 8 years ago, and we're still getting mailings to him from political parties.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's, I would like, if you know of any place to keep the texting off of your phone from political
Oh.
people,
Political people are the worst.
they're the worst. I mean, most of them, they're causes that I pull at my heartstrings, but I don't really want it in my texting feed every
Yep.
time I look at it.
Already
One of
enough
the
there.
things that I've done, is this thing you can do with emails called tagging, where it's like your email plus tag at whatever your domain is. And you can see who gives your email to who
Hmm.
if you do that.
Say that again, please, Richard.
there's a technique for emails called tagging. And so like my email is hawkfish@electricfish.com. So I will say hawkfish plus something or other at electricfish.com, particular organization, if you're concerned that they might not keep your email to themselves. And if you start seeing it coming from other people, you'll know where it came from.
Hmm,
So
Okay.
interesting. Okay.
I was just going to add a couple local things. There's Buy Nothing. I think through a lot of
Hmm.
neighborhoods in the Seattle area, at least. And you can just post whatever you're trying to get rid of, and usually someone comes available.
Mhm,
Or you can put some things out on the street corner,
mhm.
and by golly, they seem to go away by the end of a day or two. And let's see, there was one other one, the Buy Nothing I was going to mention. Well, I'm sorry, it went out of my head right now, Richard. So, I'll be quiet until
I
it
should have
comes
mentioned Buy
back.
Nothing. Thank you for adding that.
Oh, I know. Then Ridwell
Oh,
was
yeah.
another
Yeah.
one, because that's another local one that you can get rid of, light bulbs and plastic film in various formats, et cetera, for a monthly fee of under $20. And I've given away a whole lot of clothes that way. And and now they're expanding it. So clothes that are really like threadbare and aren't worn into, or those that are you'd give away to someone you knew.
Right.
So that's a further way. And I don't know on Bainbridge, Stephanie, if either of those exist.
We have Ridwell available, and we have Buy Nothing. It actually started here on Bainbridge Island. But there's the Goodwill accepts fabric to recycle as well. So there's some other
Hmm.
things. I
Mhm.
it's on the list of things to do to sign up for Ridwell. I haven't quite done it yet, but
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
yeah.
So when you were talking about screening services, there was one I used to use a while back called Calvert. I don't know if they're still around,
Hmm.
if there's new ones,
Yeah.
but
They are.
I don't know. Do you know of any other services like that? I mean, I'll put the name in the
Calvert.
Calvert. Yeah, they were. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
They used to have some service called Know What You Own.
Oh.
So you could like look at your portfolio and decide if you like it. But this was back in the 90s when I first got started on this. There's probably a lot more. It's probably a lot easier now. But if you're going to talk about screening, I don't know what other services there are out there for doing that. If you don't want to just go find an exchange traded fund or something that does all of this for you. But that's what we had back in the 90s. Like Calvert had 4 funds, and there's another one called Ariel Capital that
Mhm.
also did ethical investing.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are a number of those around. That's a good examples on it. Calvert, I think, is still around. So, and Ariel, I know. But part of it
Yeah,
is also just using these days using AI to figure out where to put things.
okay, I got to put on my tech hat for a moment. I am very leery of large language models.
Okay.
Um, check anything they say, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
all they do is they're a large statistical model of the web, and you type something in and then they start predicting the next word. That's what they do. And they can just make things up, and often do. So if you get a list of like your 3 things there, first check that they are actually there. The other, check that they're in the order you asked for. But the other problem is you don't know if that's the list or if there's stuff above it that's missing. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not a bad way to get started, but the problem with
Yeah.
these models is that they communicate the way we are used to being communicated with, and it's very easy to get lulled into a sense of complacency and just trust what they say. I
Yeah.
personally do
Well,
not use them and turn them off.
yeah.
And
I
there's
mean, Perplexity I use
actually,
because it identifies the source, and I can take a look
yeah,
at
yeah.
it.
You,
Yeah.
you
So
have
yeah,
to,
AI pros and cons. People like it or not like it, but
well,
there are different ways
check
to do
those
things.
sources is my point.
Yep, I do. I read them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely folks. I'm so sorry. I have got to run on to something else.
Okay,
Another
we've gone a
meeting.
little beyond time. We're going to close off, and
Yes.
I'll just do the final prayer. But go
Great.
ahead, Rich. Thank you for joining
No,
us.
thank you. Thank you. Excellent. And nice to be with you all. Bye-bye now.
Thank you for joining
Yeah.
us.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and close off with the closing prayer. So,
Mhm.
our closing prayer: Lord, let us not be selfish in our consumption. Let us live within our means and make better choices that impact your creation. Help us to invest in better choices so that we can make better decisions that will not harm your creation. Help us to protect and empower people, especially as we influence the next generation. Teach us to be good stewards over your land and to dwell in the beauty of your creation and every detail that you have crafted from the very beginning. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.